Once upon a time, hidden far away from the noisy world, lay the beautiful and tranquil Green Willow Pond. It was a calm, quiet place, and it was home to our hero, Jack, a mallard duck. Jack was incredibly kind, but he had one major flaw. He was terrified of everything. To Jack, leaving the pond meant certain doom. He would constantly warn his family, "Don't go out there. There are vicious bears and soaring eagles," and kept them safely confined to their tiny corner of the water. His wife Sarah was exactly his opposite. She dreamed of soaring through the vast skies and exploring new lands. Together, they had two children, Tim, a rebellious teenager who argued against everything, and Molly, a brave and adorable little duckling. To keep them from wandering, Jack would tell them terrifying bedtime stories of monsters outside the pond, leaving his family bored and restless. One day, the sky above Green Willow filled with the sound of 1,000 flapping wings. A massive flock of migrating birds landed to rest. A little duck named Kim walked over to Tim and whispered a secret. "We are flying to the Golden Island. The water there is crystal clear and the sand glitters like real gold. You should come." The children's eyes sparkled with hope. They begged their father to let them go, but Jack, frozen by his usual fears, flatly refused. That night, a heartbroken Sarah looked at Jack and said, "Your fear isn't keeping us safe, it's destroying our lives." Unable to sleep, Jack stared across the pond and saw Uncle Dan, an old, lonely duck who had never taken a single risk in his life, sitting in the dark, entirely alone. A chilling realization hit Jack. If he didn't conquer his fear, he would end up just like Uncle Dan. The next morning, just as the sun peeked over the horizon, Jack stood tall and shouted, "Sarah, Tim, Molly, wake up and pack your bags. We are going to the Golden Island." His family gasped in shock, but moments later, they took to the skies, beginning the greatest adventure of their lives. But the sky is not for the faint of heart. On their very first flight, they were swallowed by a violent thunderstorm. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and the raging winds blew them far off course, forcing them to crash land in a dark, eerie swamp. As they huddled in the hollow of a dead tree, two glowing eyes pierced the darkness. It was Boris and Bella, two massive herons. Boris, with a terrifying grin, stepped closer holding a massive knife. "Come inside. You look very tasty," he chuckled. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. In the middle of the night, Jack saw Boris creeping toward him with the blade raised high. "Help!" Jack screamed. But the knife didn't strike Jack. With a swift thwack, Boris chopped off the head of a venomous snake that was just inches away from biting Jack. It turned out Boris and Bella weren't villains at all. They were kind heroes who saved the family. Boris apologized for scaring them and told them to seek out a street-smart pigeon named Chintu in the metro city to find their way. The next morning, they flew into a chaotic world of towering buildings, honking cars, and roaring buses. Deep in a city park, they found Chintu the pigeon. "Golden Island?" Chintu said, shaking his head. "Only one bird knows the way, Rio, the macaw. But there's a problem. Rio has been captured by the evil bird collector." Jack wanted to run, But Sarah stood firm. "If a life is in danger, we must help," she declared. They snuck into the collector's massive building. Inside a gloomy room, locked inside a heavy metal cage, sat Rio, the colorful macaw. The collector was fast asleep in his chair, the cage key dangling precariously from his pocket. In a daring edge-of-your-seat stealth mission, Jack crept forward, holding his breath. He carefully slid his head into the collector's pocket and pulled out the key. He unlocked the cage, but the moment the door swung open, Rio let out a deafening screech. "Freedom!" The collector woke up with a roar. "Thieves! You're stealing my birds!" he yelled, grabbing a massive net. Books flew, lamps crashed, and total chaos erupted as Tim, Molly, and Chintu joined the fight, pushing books onto the collector's head to confuse him. Narrowly escaping his clutches, the entire flock burst through the window and soared into the sky. "Thank you, my friends!" Rio cheered. "Follow me to the Golden Island!" After days of flying, they found a beautiful farmhouse. Dozens of birds were splashing in a pool and eating delicious food. A duck named Duke welcomed them. "Welcome to Bird Paradise. Just eat, sleep, and stay forever." Jack, exhausted, wanted to settle down right there. But Tim, the suspicious teenager, felt something was wrong. "This is too easy, Dad," he warned. Tim was right. Suddenly, the deafening wub-wub-wub of helicopter blades shattered the peace. The evil collector had found them. He landed the chopper and herded the panicked birds toward a massive cage in his truck. But Jack was no longer the coward from Green Willow Pond. He stepped to the front. "I will not let you touch my family," Jack roared. He quickly hatched a master plan. While Tim and Molly opened the truck doors, Sarah and Rio distracted the collector. As the collector charged, Sarah kicked a massive sack of flour right onto his head. Covered in white powder, the collector looked like a spooky ghost. Before he could wipe his eyes, the flock launched themselves into the air. Furious, the collector jumped into his helicopter and chased them through the clouds. It was an epic aerial battle. Jack commanded the flock to form a giant V shape, flying fast and confusing the pilot. In one final brilliant move, they dropped a massive pumpkin right onto the helicopter's windshield. Blinded, the helicopter spun out and crashed safely into a giant net. The birds cheered loudly. They had won. After a few more days of flying, the clouds parted, and there it was, the Golden Island. It was more beautiful than they had ever imagined. The sand shimmered in the sunlight, and as night fell, the waters glowed with magical bioluminescent light, like millions of stars floating in the sea. The air was sweet, and the island was filled with fresh fruits and new friends. As Molly and Tim splashed joyfully in the glowing water, Sarah leaned against Jack. "So, how do you like it, Jack?" she smiled. Jack looked at his family and the breathtaking world around him. He laughed softly. "You were right, Sarah. The world is too beautiful to hide from. If I had stayed hidden in fear, I would have missed all this magic," he said. Jack was no longer the fearful duck from the pond. He had become the true king of adventure. In fact, just as they settled in, A group of lost penguins waddled onto the beach looking confused. Jack puffed out his chest, smiled warmly, and walked right up to them. "Are you lost?" Jack asked confidently. "Don't worry at all. Follow me. I'll show you the way to your next adventure."